Hi, everybody. For the legal movie review, I chose to watch and review Dark Waters. Um, the movie takes place in Parkersburg, West Virginia in 1998. Mr. Tennant, who is a cattle farmer from West Virginia, a very small town, starts having problems with his cows. They're getting sick, they're dying, they're getting tumors, they're fallen. He's lost 190 cows. At that point, he's pretty much fed up. He starts doing his own autopsies to find out what is going on with them, just to check for abnormalities. He finds tumors, blackened teeth, gums, turned in hooves for newborn cattle. They start displaying aggressive behaviors also. He finds enlarged organs as well. He brings tapes to Mr. Bilott, who is the corporate attorney. At first, Mr. Bilott, the corporate attorney, kind of shoos him away until Mr. Bilott finds out that his grandmother referred the farmer to him. So then he takes a trip to see his grandmother, talks to her about it, and I guess at that point he decides to continue with the case and tells Mr. Tennant that he's going to help him. It kind of piqued his interest, I suppose. And Mr. Tennant, who's the farmer, alleges the DuPont Corporation is behind his cows being sick. He thinks that they're disposing of chemicals in his creek. So these would be crimes. It would be counted, I believe, as a civil case, Mr. Tennant versus the DuPont Corporation. The crimes were that he's alleging, or that Mr. Bilott is alleging, is willful negligence and corruption by the DuPont Corporation, leaking of the C8 chemical, purposely and lying about it for 40 years, from going back to 1974, I guess I should have started that way. But the plaintiff had to prove that the townspeople were ill due to the C8, which is a chemical in the town's water. By doing blood work, that's how they're testing to see if the residents have C8 in their blood. They also use DuPont's own records with regards to medical issues pertaining to female workers on the Teflon line. And then also other written documentation that Mr. Bilott uncovered from when the DuPont Corporation gave him access to hundreds and hundreds of boxes of records that had to do with the DuPont and the Teflon cases. DuPont was alleging that Mr. Tennant, the farmer, that his cows were dying due to negligence, improper care, poor nutrition, flies being present on his land. They alleged that this is what was causing Mr. Tennant's cows to die. In my opinion, my opinion of the movie, I liked it because it shined a light on a really terrible thing that the DuPont Corporation was doing. And basically, we're all affected. To this day, we still are. If we use Teflon-coated cookware or nonstick cookware, we're affected. At the end of the movie, it's stated that 99% of humans are infected, or we carry the C8 chemical in our bodies, so we're all affected. So it shined a light on things here, at home. It made me upset that the government allowed it to continue. I mean, they didn't know, or they say they didn't know, but they allowed it to continue. This was reality, so there really is nothing to compare it to if it happened outside of Hollywood. So this is reality. Outside of Hollywood, let's see here. Oh, so if it happened outside of Hollywood, I'd hope Mr. Bilott would take the case again because he really fought tooth and nail for the people of West Virginia. In regards to portraying the legal system, I feel it was accurate. The timeline was very long. It took a long time. I feel like the DuPont Corporation tried to drag it out as long as they could, hoping that Mr. Bilott would just drop the case. It was about 11 years from start to finish on the Tennant case, and Mr. Tennant sadly passed away from cancer before the case was resolved. Um, so the plaintiff met their burden when in 2015 the DuPont company settled 3,535 of the cases at $670.7 million. The medical lab determined that all the people who had their blood sampled had C8 in their blood and were eventually going to develop some sort of cancer or some sort of ailment due to the C8 chemical. To this day, Mr. Bilott is still fighting for the people in West Virginia. It's really sad. It was a great movie, a great representation of the law, the corruptness, the good people of the world, the farmers that are really trying to make it happen. But unfortunately, sometimes these big corporations are in cahoots with the government, or like in this movie, the C8 chemical, PFOA, was not even registered as a chemical. It was around before the EPA was put together, so they kind of just slipped under the radar, and DuPont continued using this chemical without the EPA even knowing. So shame on them. I know this probably happens often still, but it's really saddening. So all in all, Mr. Tennant did win. Even though he died, he helped save a lot of people's lives by making noise, by trying to make a difference, even though the townspeople shunned him when he filed a lawsuit against the DuPont Corporation, because it's a small town and it was the bread and butter of their town. They employed like something like 90% of the town's population. So at first, the townspeople shunned him and his wife. It was awful, but also the C8 caused birth defects for the female workers in the Teflon line. They would cause abnormalities like the eyes being set apart, half a nostril missing, just complications with births and birth defects. So the DuPont Corporation just kind of shoved everything under the rug, hoping that no one would ever find out. But Mr. Bilott, the attorney, the corporate attorney, really went to bat for them and helped them out, even though it almost cost him his life. He had a heart attack during the whole process, or I'm sorry, not a heart attack, but a stroke is what the movie portrayed it to be. Pretty sure it was a stroke or a TIA. He lived, but it took such a long time to get it from start to finish. The Mr. Bilott, the attorney, had an infant at the beginning of this movie, and at the end he's got like several kids, and most of the older ones look like they could be middle school children. So it was a very long case, and it had a good outcome. That's my take on it. Thank you.